Hey guys, welcome back to another episode. So today we're going to do a quick restoration project on this little spoke shave. Something I picked up in the antique shop for probably $5, and I've been sitting around for a little while, so I'd like to get to it. I actually need it for a project that's coming up that I'm working on. So really, there's not much that I want to do to this. I want to do a little bit of work on the handle, and most of the work is going to be on this blade. It's really dull. So let me give you an example of what I mean. So here we're at the shave forest. I've just got a little sample piece, a little push stick that I made out of some ash. One of the nice things about this antique spoke shave is that the base is slightly curved right here. You barely see it. So that's going to allow us to get into some of those areas with a slight scooping action, little curved areas, and follow that curvature. So right now, I'm getting nothing really, very, very minimal bite with this blade whatsoever. And I can feel the edge is completely rolled over. So it's in desperate need of a restore. It's a good little decorative project too, if you want it on your shelf, but I actually really want to use this thing. I think it's got some good design features. It's comfortable. It's a traditional format. It has a nice little brass plate on here as well, kind of a high quality look, and I think it'll do well for some, to be put to some regular use in the shop. So if you're not already familiar with these types of tools, you would say, well, how do I adjust this thing? If you want a deeper cut, you adjust it with these little tangs sticking up, knock on the top, and this one's super tight. It's been sitting there for a long time, but it will adjust it down, or you knock on the bottom and it will adjust it for a very tight space as well. In this case, looks like I'm going to have to go at it with something a little bit different because it's just wedged in there so tight. These tangs are actually a taper, and the hole that they fit into is tapered as well. So it has a lot of wood fiber pressing against it, kind of similar to the antique nails that they used to use. And that means that it's going to be a really tight fit. And somebody's just jammed it right up there. So there's almost nothing protruding below this brass plate as well. So we'll knock that out, and then we'll get started in the sharpening process. If you're going to do this, make sure that your hammer is not hardened. This one in particular, you can see the surface is completely dented up, and it's worn away as well. So this is not a hardened hammerhead, and that means I'm not going to damage that small tang there. Look at the square corners here, right in here. This is all done by hand. And you can see the irregularities in it as well. I never didn't actually look for a maker's mark. I'm not sure where that would be. Once I start to clean this up a little bit, maybe it'll appear. Let's get started in the cleanup and then into the sharpening. So you've seen my other videos, you'll know that I really don't like to polish these up too much. I kind of like to keep the original look to it. So steel wool is a good option for that. This is a very fine abrasive. It's not going to remove all of this nice color that's developed over time. Okay, I'm happy with that. Water stones and some sharpening grit. Japanese water stone. It's a ceramic stone. So do what you can to keep your stone flat. I know it wears it down a little bit, but it will help you with these sorts of tools where you really need a flat surface on the bottom, or at least pretty close to flat. I think I'd mentioned this one has a slight contour to it. I'm not even sure that you can pick that up with the eye. We'll see when we start sharpening. So try and use the most surface area of your stone. So 700 grit's going to take this down pretty quick. So there's just a slight curve to this, so we're going to need to try and rock this almost to make sure we account for the entire surface. So I did actually have some trouble. I found out that the pitting was a little bit too deep, so what I did was went over to the vise with a small file, fairly fine file, removed that pitting the best that I could. It's only critical that you remove the pit right at this edge here. Anything slightly back or beyond from that doesn't matter, unless you're really you want to make it look really nice and polished. Then go ahead and remove a bit more material. But it's not important for the function of this particular device. So I'm going to do the same because I had so much trouble with the back. I'll go ahead and actually clean this up with the file and do the exact same process with the small file device. Just checking in here, two things. One, because of this curvature, this just slight cupping to match the base or the design of the handle. The bottom is not flat. And if you were trying to use a stone flat like this to flatten this out, you would end up with an okay result. But what you would see is an uneven taper. Uneven taper back, you'd have a larger section backward here, or sorry, it would be closer to the back, producing kind of a curve along the front edge here. So I wanted to try and avoid that, stick with basically what's here. So you have a couple ways you can do that. To use the edge here, something very close so that it can actually match that contour as you go along. Or what I've been doing is up on the edge, like this. It's just enough to do the trick. So the result you're looking for at this point is that burr along the entire edge of the bottom, and this is exactly what I have. So we'll move on to the finer grit. Okay, so this is the 3000 grit stone. I'm going to do the exact same processes on both this face and this one. We'll end up with a much finer edge, a smaller burr. Still looking for that burr, though it's going to be much easier to remove, and this will be very polished looking after this stage. I'm doing just a shallow rocking motion to make sure I account for the entire base of the bottom of this plane iron, or spoke shave iron, they call them. So even at this point, you should start to see that polished, much more polished look to the bottom. We'll see how it turns out. So I've got quite the shine there. Got a little bit more polished edge. It's not quite getting everything, so I'll have to find out what's going on there. Maybe I'm applying pressure in the wrong spot, but you can see quite a bit of shine and reflection coming off of that at this point. So I'll do a bit more work on that and then come back to you. So after some work, we're getting really close to where we want to be. Just almost a mirror finish on the bottom. We'll even actually be better than this after I strop the bottom. You'll see a substantial difference from this point. Here you can still see some small score lines, some etching lines from the abrasive material in the stone. And I've also been using a little bit of wet dry sandpaper 400 grit initially, because this contour here, this just slight arc on the bottom is causing a lot of trouble for staying flat on this face here on the stone. So we're at a good spot with this grit. Remove this stone. I don't know if you've noticed, I made these bases here for the stones. They didn't come with bases. I hollowed out this section here just to promote drying for these stones, just so they're not sitting in moisture, and then I can just leave them on this base all the time. And that works out pretty well for me. I'll load it up. Polishing compound. Here's where you're going to start to see a big difference in the look and the cutting ability of this tool. Make sure when you do this, you do not dig in. The leather, again, is pretty soft, so it'll actually, if you just have your angle just a little bit off, it'll dig in. And then also because it's soft, it'll tend to round over, radius over this front edge a little bit. So when I do this, I always do this on the pull stroke. And you'll start to see some black residue appearing here. And that means that it's working. And that's the kind of result you're going to get. You could do more. You really only need to focus on the edge. I wouldn't go too crazy with this because it does tend to round over a little bit. And the next time you go to sharpen, you'll have to take that out. That's pretty good. I'm happy with that. The same idea here. You know, it's going to be really difficult with this. So I have another tool that I'd like to show you. You can do this on the edge. That does tend to work. Okay. I'll show you the other tool. This is a hand strop that I made in another episode of Need It, Make It. Same idea. So again, on the downstroke, so the blade does not dig into this material and the strop. Nice and sharp. Very sharp. So back here with the handle, I just want to do a quick little use a very fine abrasive. Clean this up a little bit, open up some of the pores, and then I'll use a linseed oil, and then I'll reapply that, buff it in, reassemble, and then we're done. Be careful if you use sandpaper here. You don't really want to take too much off. You're going to ruin the antique look of these tools. You can see in some areas this is very dry. Right in here, very dry. So this needs some oil on it. The same goes here. Okay, so here's linseed oil. Just remember the precautions. Read the back for disposal of any rags. Result. Let's see how we did. that's it. Thanks for watching, guys. If you like the video, please like, subscribe, and comment. See you next time.